and I'm in recovery right now for divorce, depression, and acceptance of others. My life verse that I've always had for my life verse is, all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So my life started out, I was born in New York to my father. He was a pastor. And my mother, who was a young stay-at-home mother. They married very quickly and had 3 children in 3 years. I'm the oldest. So one night, my father was in a rage, and he beat my mother and raped her in front of me. I was 3. That's the last time I saw him. My mother moved us to Massachusetts to get away from him. She was in a few abusive relationships and then married again when I was 4, so within a year she had multiple relationships. And then married when I was 4. She met him in the church, and him and my mother both became ordained ministers, both in leadership in the church, preaching and all that. My stepfather was a strict military man with extreme OCD. He was a dry alcoholic and very abusive, physically, emotionally, mentally, you name it. My mom was an over-submissive wife. She didn't defend me, and I felt unsafe as a child because I didn't have a mom to protect me. All this while having to keep the church face as a minister's kid. I love God so much, and I love to sing to him. I love being at church, but I hated being at home. I was also bullied really bad in school, and I would get it when I got home. If I got hit by a kid basically at school, and the principal heard about it, I'd get beat at home too, because that's just how it was. I was always being yelled at, beaten, or abused in some way. I was never good enough to them or anyone else. I had extreme anxiety, always breaking things and messing up on accident on everything. At a young age, I started to have severe pain in my whole body, always sick, and the doctors could never find anything wrong with me. I know now it was depression. I would always cover up the bruises or scabs so no one would see. But one day I got brave and went to my guidance counselor at school and showed her the bruises, and they sent DSS to my house and made him leave. But he came back 3 months later, even angrier at me. I was the target because I fought back and I yelled back. And then all this happening, being bullied and all this was happening while I was being molested at multiple places. One from the church, person in the church, and then other places. So multiple people, multiple occasions. And by 10, I would black out in rages and not remember anything of what I did. My grades were awful, although I was really smart. I would take handfuls of anything I could find in the cabinet, ibuprofen, Tylenol, anything, because I was just in so much pain physically as well as emotionally. I started to have bloody noses and sleeping so much, but it was because my blood was so thin from how much medication I was taking. So they locked it all up, and then I was just in severe pain all the time physically. By 13, I was fighting back with punches. One day it got real bad, and the police came because he beat me so bad in the street for everyone to see. They got a divorce. I thought everything would get better, but my mom left the church and got a full-time job, like single moms do. But she became an alcoholic and had men in and out of the house, some that would hit on me and my sister. So at 13, I would go missing for weeks at a time. I got expelled from school and ran the streets. So at 13, I was drinking, smoking, sleeping around, gangs, guns, drugs. I was always in fist fights. Like I loved to fight because I felt like I had power, especially fighting with men. I just loved fist fighting men because I felt like I had dominance over a man for once. Like I could finally hurt somebody and they not hurt me. By 14, I was raped. By 15, I was gang raped. Then I got into an abusive relationship at 15 with a man in his late 20s. Horrible abusive relationship. I was in and out of juvie, in and out of psych units for suicide, and in the streets drinking till I passed out. At 16, the state took custody of me, which was for my good, thank God. I was in and out of too many foster homes to count. No one can handle me because I was so out of control, so they put me in lockdown for teen programs. I had severe anxiety, PTSD, depression, and I was suicidal. I had no one, no family. My mom was in the same town, but she just, no family, no sister, nobody. I ended up being in a psychiatric unit for 3 months straight, and I ended up doing well from that. At 16, I ended up getting A's. I was a peer leader at my alternative school. I was placed in my own apartment at 17 years old, but was secretly addicted to porn and pornography and to sex. And it had to be a secret because for men, I guess it's normal for men, and the way I thought about it, but for women it was very shameful. And I knew it was wrong, but I just was severely addicted to it. And that was a reaction, obviously, off of the sexual abuse. And I even went to a sexual addiction support group, but they were all men, and they all had sexual addiction, so I wasn't going, no, I'm in there again. I walked in like, nope, I'm gone. Bye. Yeah. So at 17, I became pregnant with my beautiful daughter. So before my 18th birthday, I was pregnant. I dropped out of school, lost my apartment, aged out of DSS, and became homeless with nowhere to go. I kept going into the hospital for severe depression and dehydration because I wasn't eating. I was malnourished because I didn't have no food and I had nowhere to sleep. So the hospital's kind of a shelter when you have nowhere to go to. So finally, at 7.5 months pregnant, DSS changed the rules, thank God, and allowed pregnant teens into foster care. So I had my first daughter in foster home at 18. She taught me everything, how to feed my daughter, how to burp her, how to wash her, everything. And got up with her in the middle of the night when I was too tired, all while my real mother was living right down the street from me. And I loved my daughter so much. Like, this is the moment I saw her, and I promised she would never go through what I went through. I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, stopped sleeping around. I got my GED, a car, started college, and a job within 3 months of her being born. But my health took a turn for the worst. I couldn't move, I was in so much pain. My whole life I was in severe pain and exhaustion, but it hit me really bad after I had her. And I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia, as well as a lot of other health conditions. I couldn't even get out of bed, and then became severely depressed, obviously, because I can't even get up. I had an apartment, and then I lost that after losing my job and getting kicked out of school from too many absences, from being in the hospital and sick so much. So I became homeless again with my daughter, and she was 2. And I lived in my car with my daughter. It was like a month. She, no family, no friends. We lived in my car. Thank God I had a car. And obviously I didn't sleep because I was worried about her sleeping. But like, it was to the point, like, my mom was right there. Like, she lived in the neighborhood. And I parked my car outside so I can sleep in the car in a safe neighborhood. And she knew I was there. And I couldn't go inside to get food or to the bathroom or anything. She wouldn't let me. Because she was dealing with her own addictions, as well from her own pain. So I finally went into shelters with my daughter, and I got on my feet again. I had my own place, I was doing okay. And then I met my first husband. He and I got married and pregnant within 6 months. So at 21, married with 2 kids. And my husband struggled with drug addiction, alcoholism, and he was in the streets in gangs, selling drugs and doing all that. And I was severely codependent with rage, depression, anxiety. Can't nobody tell me nothing because I got a big attitude and like huge walls and I hate everybody. So it was just a combination of 2 people that were too young in the first place, from 2 bad upbringings, making a bigger mess together and making things worse for each other. We both triggered each other and made everything worse for each other. And the relationship obviously made me feel, again, that men are awful. I hate men, absolutely hate men. Can't even stand them, don't even look at me. You know what I mean? Thank God I'm somewhat safe and I won't hit you, you know? I'm being honest. And, you know? And I hate men, and I just, you know? And I hated men. But in this relationship, I felt like I wasn't good enough, I wasn't pretty, I was insignificant, I was a loser, like, because my whole life I've been told, you're ugly, you're a loser, you're fat, you're not good enough, you're never going to be anything, you're this, you're that, all bad names you can think of, while being treated like you're only a sex object, period. Like, all men want sex, period. That's it. That's all they want. Either that or power. And usually they use sex to get power, just like women, just in a different way. So my point of view was I hated men because all they want to do is dominate and control and hurt people. And they will take whatever they want, no matter what. And that's what I was in my brain at the time. So I was in that relationship, really unhealthy. All of a sudden, boom, again, I lost my home. I lost everything in my house. I thank God I had a car and some clothes and my kids in the back, and that's all I had left. I lost everything all over again. He ended up getting 2 years in prison, and I went into 5 shelters in 2 years. 5 shelters in 1 year. I ended up out here in the middle of nowhere, Fitchburg. I never heard of it, ever. Like, I'm from like Boston, you know what I'm saying? And like Lawrence, you know what I mean? Fitchburg, what is that, you know? So, I was so mad at God for putting me out here, you have no idea. I was so angry, like, why would you put me out here? Like, this place is awful. Like, that's what I really honestly thought. When I first came, I'm sorry, for the people who were born here. Sorry. You know, so, I hated it. Then I ended up moving to Fitchburg, though, because it's so cheap, you know what I mean? So you gotta do what you gotta do. But, so I had my own place again, on my feet again, with 2 kids, husband in jail, and for the first time in my life, everything was quiet. I was in the middle of nowhere, I had nobody again. By myself, I didn't even know one person in this neighborhood at all. But for the first time, it was quiet. And the silence killed me more than the chaos, because I was used to the chaos. I was used to survival mode and used to surviving. I was like in shock my whole life, like this. And then when everything was quiet, everything caught up with me, all the emotions, all the pain, all the suffering, everything that I actually went through. I couldn't believe that I actually went through it. Somehow, I don't know, it's like traumatic, and somehow you come to and all the emotions hit you. And then I was already struggling with depression. But it got like so bad in the middle of nowhere. And I always believed in God my whole life. I loved Him, I prayed, I read my Bible even, I even spoke in tongues. And I was depressed, wanting to end it, because I was like, whatever. So I remember one day I was walking in my kitchen, and I thought in my head, what if God really isn't real? What if this entire time, my entire life, I made myself believe that so I wouldn't kill myself? And I felt hope leave me. It's like the worst feeling. Oh my God, it's awful. And I went in my room and I said, God, if you're real, you need to do something now, because I believed in you my whole life and ain't nothing but pain and suffering. And you never did anything. You haven't protected me. You haven't done nothing for me. So if you're real, you need to do something now. I ended up coming to Crossroads, and in Romans 18, one of the things that I always held on to was, for the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed in your life. But if that wasn't true, then the suffering's for nothing, and I couldn't believe that. So I ended up coming to Crossroads to revival thing. And then I ended up coming to Celebrate Recovery because Greta, I didn't even know Greta, just by the way, like, I was on the internet yard sale site, like, hey, does anybody know a church in the area? Somebody's like, come to every Crossroads, and then I get a message from somebody saying, hey, contact this girl, Greta. I'm like, hey, can you pick me up? And she's like, sure. She didn't know me or my kids, and she's picked me up from my house in the middle of Garnett Street. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, God bless you. Thank you, for real. She was the first person to, like, ever, like, you know, So I came here. Okay, so I was so broken. I hated men, didn't trust anyone. I had walls so thick no one can even hug me. Like, I'm trying to be quick because I know there's like a time limit, but like I didn't know this about myself because everybody's all huggy and everything here. And when people would come to me and then they come in and then they go like this, and I'm like, why don't they hug me? What's wrong with them? Like, oh, they don't like me. Da, da, da. To find out, like, my face would go. Would somebody come near me? Like, and I would be like, yeah, you know, Janice. Like, and then they're like, why do you? And then I see their whole face get horrified. Like, I don't think I should touch her. It was really bad. I mean, back in the day, like somebody went like, hey, what's up, Sarah? I'd black out and beat you up. Like, that's how that was. Like, just from touching me. Like, you can't. Don't touch me. But, you know. Guys. Okay. So, yeah, the walls were so thick. And I came to CR and so I had these walls, and then I remember the first time that in the small group, I ended up just crying, which I don't cry in front of people. I'll cry a lot behind closed doors, but in front of people, that's weakness. You can't do that. So I cried, and I couldn't understand why I was crying, and I was so mad at myself for crying, and I couldn't stop crying, and the whole time I'm crying. I'm like, what's going on with me? Like, what? And I literally cried for at least 6 months. At least 6 months. Probably a year. I'm still crying, really, but like, you know, it's just as bad as it was. And it was the first place I can say, no, I'm not okay. And it couldn't be talked about to other people to judge me. I wasn't being judged because everybody else was going through something. And it was a place where people were being real and talking about something that's real, because in reality, everybody wants you to put on a face or what you're supposed to look like or act like or talk like, and here I could really be the big old mess that I was. I couldn't hear anything, like receive any correction at the time. All I could do was cry and say, I'm hurt, this hurts, help me. It was my first step to recovery. Just letting it all out. I slowly started to build relationships, and for the first time in my life, I did learn to take correction by my mentor, because it was done out of love and not anger. I could never trust anybody my whole life, and I started to gain trust in God as well as people. I learned not everyone wants to hurt you. I called my mentor literally like 4 or 5 times a day. God bless you. And it wasn't like, can you please pray for me? No, it was like, I can't stand it. It was like flipping out because I was in like, I have no idea what was going on. It was all this stuff coming out. But like 4 or 5 times a day, I had to utilize her for at least 6 months, right? Was it 6 months? At least, minimum. And then I went to somebody else for 4 or 5 times a day. You know, so like it's a process. But like 4 or 5 times a day, it's because like I needed that person, the one person that can just listen, and just listen, and I was safe, and I could tell them for real what happened. And I started working the steps. And oh man, it was painful because I couldn't blame anyone else anymore. I couldn't make excuses. I had to change my ways. I got in my word, I prayed, I came to church anytime I could, and I did inner healing prayer, which inner healing prayer like really broke those bondages and strongholds off me that I was not strong enough to do through prayer myself. Like when we're new, we don't understand how to walk in authority, we don't understand how to break things off of ourselves. Inner healing prayer was a tool to help me teach myself on how to break through things spiritually, to be who I've been called to be in Christ, so that I can break through these walls, you know what I mean? But it was like a stepping stone to that, because I didn't know how to do it yet. And it was amazing, it really changed my life. 6 sessions, and I was like a new person. Free of charge. They didn't even charge, you know? So it's been almost 3 years now. It's been really hard and a long process. It's not easy, but it's worth it. I wanted to leave CR and even the church many times, but I stayed because we become purified through the fire. Because of God in this church and CR, as well as mentors, I have grown so much. I have ways to go, but I'm on my way. God has restored my mother and she is now saved, as well as her husband and a couple family members. My daughter is doing so good thanks to Celebration Place with the kids downstairs. It really helped so much. I have no addictions. I'm free from who I used to be. I'm not what was done to me. I am who God says I am. I'm going through a divorce right now, and it hurts. I'm going through it. And I'm learning to be alone with only God and be okay with that. I'm still learning that the only one I need approval from is God. I'm learning when I'm sad and lonely that I'm not alone, and it really does get better in time. I'm learning to trust people, but most of all, love people, even the ones that don't love me back. I have learned to forgive because everyone who hurts another is hurting in some way themselves. I'm learning to trust in God, trust the process, and have faith in the words God speaks over me through His Word. Anyone who's new, I would say, trust the process, stay in the fire, and allow yourself to grow into what God has created you to be. Work the steps, work the Word, and go all in. It will be worth it. And know that you are never alone. God is in the midst of it all. Be open and honest about your struggles. Be real with yourself, and be real with somebody, someone that you can trust. Don't be too hard on yourself, but be honest enough to make the changes that need to be made. In every situation, only look to God and at yourself. Take responsibility where you need to. Stay humble. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to hurt, but not as bad as never becoming who you were meant to be. And the ending scripture is Psalms 62:5. Rest in God alone, my soul, for my hope comes from Him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I will not be shaken. My salvation and glory depends on God, my strong rock. My refuge is in God. Trust in Him at all times and pour out your hearts before Him. God is our refuge.
Awesome.